Somewhere right now, there is a garden no one is watering, no fertilizer, no pesticide, no special soil, no weekend maintenance, and it is producing more food per square foot than most modern vegetable plots ever will. That garden existed thousands of years ago, and the people who grew it didn't call themselves expert gardeners. They called themselves survivors. Here's what nobody in the garden center ever tells you. The most resilient, most nutritious, most unstoppable vegetables ever grown on this earth were not engineered in a laboratory. They were not developed by a seed company. They were not featured in a gardening magazine. They were documented plant by plant, harvest by harvest, in the most read book in human history. The people of the Bible didn't garden for leisure, they gardened for survival. And the plants they chose grew like weeds. Today, we are walking through 13 of those plants, and I promise you, by the time we reach number 1, you are going to look at your garden, or your balcony, or your windowsill, and see it completely differently. Because plant number 1 is so unstoppable. Ancient farmers didn't just grow it, they couldn't stop it from growing. Before we get into the list, I want to say something that most gardening channels never stop to acknowledge. We live in a time when a packet of seeds costs more than a bag of chips, when food prices rise every season, when people with small apartments and no land feel completely locked out of growing their own food. That was never supposed to be the case. For thousands of years, the ordinary person, not the wealthy landowner, not the trained agronomist, grew their own food. In poor soil, in dry climates, in small spaces, with nothing but a seed and the knowledge passed down through generations. The Bible isn't a gardening manual, but it contains something more valuable than any gardening manual ever written. A record of which plants fed real people in real hardship across thousands of years. In Numbers 11:5, the Israelites wandering in the wilderness didn't cry out for exotic produce. They cried out for cucumbers, leeks, onions, garlic, the simplest, most self-sustaining crops they had ever known, the plants that practically grew themselves. That list tells you everything. These weren't luxury crops. These were survival crops, and every single one of them grows like a weed. Let us start with number 13. In Matthew 13:31, Jesus didn't use the mustard seed as a symbol of something fragile or delicate. He used it because everyone listening knew exactly what a mustard plant did when it was left alone. It took over. A single mustard seed, smaller than the tip of your fingernail, becomes a plant so large that birds nest in its branches. That is not poetic exaggeration. That is agricultural fact. Mustard is one of the most aggressively self-seeding plants you can put in the ground. It scatters its own seeds before you can harvest them, germinates in soil that most vegetables would refuse, and returns every season without being replanted. It grows in full sun, it grows in partial shade, it grows in clay, it grows in sand. It simply grows. Plant mustard seeds directly in the ground or in a large pot, about a 1/4 inch deep, 2 inches apart. Water it once to establish it. Then, step back. The leaves are edible from the beginning. Young leaves go into salads. Mature leaves go into soups and stews. The seeds are harvested for one of the most ancient condiments on earth. And here is the health truth most people miss. Mustard greens are loaded with glucosinolates, compounds now studied extensively for their role in reducing chronic inflammation. The same inflammation quietly driving joint pain, fatigue, and accelerated aging in millions of people over 50. The next plant on this list was so valuable to the Israelites in Egypt that when they were freed from slavery, they mourned, leaving it behind more than almost anything else. Numbers 11:5 records one of the most human moments in all of Scripture. Asanti, the Israelites are freed from 400 years of slavery, are standing in the wilderness with their freedom, and they are grieving a vegetable. We remember the leeks, the onions, the garlic of Egypt. People do not weep for ordinary food. They weep for food that was woven into the fabric of daily life, food that was always there, food that cost almost nothing to grow and gave back everything. Leeks are exactly that plant. They are cold hardy to a degree that surprises most gardeners. They will stand in frozen ground through winter and emerge in spring ready to harvest. They grow in poor soil. They require almost no watering once established, and a single planting produces harvest for multiple seasons. Plant leek seedlings or set 6 inches apart in any reasonably well-drained soil. They prefer full sun but will tolerate partial shade. Water them in, then largely leave them alone. The health return is extraordinary for such an effortless plant. Leeks are dense in vitamin K, the nutrient directly responsible for bone mineralization, the same nutrient that becomes critical in the years after 50 when bone density begins its quiet decline. A leek in your garden costs almost nothing. The bone fracture it may prevent costs everything. The next plant was listed right beside the leeks in that same verse of Numbers, but its health secret goes far deeper than most people ever discover. The onion doesn't ask for much. Push a small bulb 2 inches into the earth, give it sunlight, walk away. Come back months later and it has multiplied. This is why the Israelites listed onions among the foods they missed most desperately from Egypt. Not because they were luxurious, because they were reliable. Because in a world without refrigeration, without modern agriculture, without certainty about tomorrow, the onion was always there. Onions thrive in almost any well-drained soil and are remarkably tolerant of temperature swings. Plant sets, small starter bulbs, in early spring or fall, 4 inches apart. They need minimal water and almost no maintenance. When the green tops begin to fall over on their own, they are ready. And here is the compound that makes the onion genuinely remarkable for senior health: quercetin, a flavonoid that has been shown in repeated studies to reduce systemic inflammation, support cardiovascular function, and actively inhibit the cellular processes associated with cognitive decline. The ancient world didn't know the word quercetin, but they knew that people who ate onions daily seemed to age differently. The next plant in our list shares the same biblical verse as the onion, but its medicinal power is so well documented that modern pharmaceutical companies have spent decades trying to replicate it synthetically. Garlic is mentioned in the Talmud, in Egyptian medical papyri, in Greek, Roman, and Chinese medical texts thousands of years before modern medicine existed. Every ancient culture that encountered garlic kept growing it. There is a reason for that. Garlic is one of the most nutritionally complete vegetables you can grow. It requires almost no effort. Plant individual cloves, pointed end up, 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart in the fall. Mulch lightly. Forget about it until spring. Harvest when the lower leaves begin to brown. One planting, one season, 12 or more bulbs per clove planted. A return that almost no other vegetable can match. The active compound, allicin, forms only when raw garlic is crushed or chopped. It is antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and cardiovascular protective in ways that continue to generate peer-reviewed research in 2026. More practically, for anyone managing blood pressure, supporting immune function, or simply trying to reduce the number of medications they take in the years after 60 and PRI, there are few vegetables with a stronger evidence base. The Israelites weren't mourning garlic because it tasted good. They were mourning their pharmacy. We are moving into the plants that defined entire civilizations. Plant 9 was so central to the biblical world that God used it to explain how he fed an entire nation in the wilderness. When God provided manna in the wilderness, the Bible describes it as looking like coriander seed. That is not a random comparison. Coriander seed was one of the most immediately recognizable things in the ancient world. Tiny, round, pale, abundant, familiar to every person who had ever grown food. Coriander is a self-seeding annual that behaves almost exactly like a weed. Plant it once, let a few plants go to seed at the end of the season, and it will return every year without being replanted. It tolerates poor soil, germinates quickly, and produces both edible leaves, called cilantro, and seeds, which are the dried spice. Are the seeds. Scatter them on the soil surface and rake lightly. Water once. They germinate within 2 weeks. The health return from coriander seed is centered around a compound called linalool, a natural anxiolytic that reduces cortisol levels and supports the parasympathetic nervous system. In practical terms, it is a plant that helps your body come down from a state of chronic stress. Chronic stress and chronic pain share the same neurological pathway. A garden that grows coriander is quietly working on both. Plant 8 was literally tithed to God in the New Testament. Jesus named it by name. That tells you exactly how significant it was in the ancient economy of health. In Matthew 23:23, Jesus rebuked the Pharisees for tithing their mint and dill and cumin down to the last leaf, while neglecting justice and mercy. The rebuke was not about the tithing. The rebuke was about proportion. But buried in that verse is a revelation about the ancient world's relationship with these plants. You tithe what is precious. You tithe what has real value, and dill was precious enough to measure by the leaf. Dill is one of the easiest self-seeding herbs you can grow. Scatter seeds in a sunny patch. Water once. Watch it establish. Let it flower and set seed before the season ends, and it will self-sow faithfully every year without any intervention from you. For container gardeners, dill does well in a deep pot. Its taproot needs room to go down. The active compounds in dill seed, dicarvone, and limonene have been shown to significantly reduce intestinal spasm and bloating. For anyone who has lived with digestive discomfort, post-meal cramping, and/or irritable bowel symptoms, this is a plant worth knowing intimately. The ancient world called it a digestive cure. Modern gastroenterology calls it a carminative. Different century, same plant, same result. We are now entering the second half of our list, and the plants get more powerful. Plant 7 has been growing in gardens and roadsides for centuries. Most people pull it out as a weed. That is the most expensive gardening mistake you can make. Walk out to almost any garden, any pathway, any crack in a pavement right now, and there's a good chance purslane is already growing there. Most people bend down and pull it out. They have been discarding one of the most nutritionally dense plants on earth. Purslane is believed to be among the wild bitter herbs consumed during Passover and throughout the wilderness period. It is one of the oldest cultivated green vegetables in human history. Grown deliberately in Egypt, Greece, Rome, Persia, and India for thousands of years before Western gardening culture decided it was a weed. Here is what makes purslane extraordinary. It contains more omega-3 fatty acids than any other leafy vegetable on earth. More than spinach, more than kale, a nutrient almost exclusively associated with fish oil, growing in the cracks of your garden path for free. You do not need to plant purslane. You need to stop removing it. If you want to cultivate it deliberately, scatter seeds on the soil surface in warm weather and leave them uncovered. They germinate in full sun with almost no moisture. In poor, dry, compacted soil where almost nothing else survives, purslane thrives. Eat the young leaves raw in salads. Add the stems to soups. Steep them in warm water as a mineral-rich infusion. Every part of this plant is edible and every part is medicine. We are halfway through this list. 7 plants down, 6 to go. And I need you to stay with me, because the 6 we have not covered yet are where this list gets truly extraordinary. We have talked about plants that grow abundantly and feed your body. The next 6 go deeper than that. These are the plants that ancient peoples grew, not just because they were easy, but because they were irreplaceable. The crops that showed up in sacred ceremonies, in royal provisions, in the instructions God gave directly to his people. Plants that modern pharmaceutical companies have spent decades and billions of dollars trying to replicate in a laboratory. You can grow every single one of them in a pot. Yet let us keep going. Plant 6 was so essential to ancient life that it was woven directly into the fabric of the tabernacle. It was a crop, a medicine, and a symbol, all in one. Rahab hid the Israelite spies under stalks of flax drying on her rooftop. The woman of Proverbs 31, the picture of wisdom and industry, works with flax in her hands. Flax was everywhere in the biblical world, and it grew effortlessly. Flax is a cool season annual that self-seeds readily and requires almost no maintenance once established. Scatter seeds in early spring in any well-drained soil. They do not need to be buried, just pressed lightly against the earth. They germinate in 2 weeks. By summer, the field of delicate blue flowers it produces is one of the most beautiful things a garden will ever contain. But the seed is where the real story lives. Flaxseed is the richest plant source of alpha-linolenic acid, an omega-3 fatty acid that directly suppresses interleukin-6, one of the primary inflammatory proteins responsible for joint stiffness and the deep morning ache that makes getting out of bed a negotiation rather than a reflex. One critical instruction, and this matters enormously: grind the seeds fresh each time. Pre-ground flax oxidizes within hours. A 15-second pass through a small grinder each morning is the difference between a functional medicine and an empty ritual. 1 tablespoon, freshly ground, in warm water, every morning. Plant 5 was mentioned by Jesus as one of the herbs worth tithing, but its real significance in the ancient world was not culinary, it was neurological. If you plant mint in a garden bed, Charles, you will spend years trying to contain it. This is not a warning. This is the point. Mint spreads underground through a network of rhizomes that laugh at barriers and ignore seasons. Plant it in spring. By fall, it has doubled. By the following spring, it has tripled. It returns every year with no intervention, survives frost, tolerates shade, and produces prolifically in almost any soil condition. Grow it in a large pot to keep it from taking over, but even in a pot on a balcony, it will produce more than most households can use. The compound that matters for senior health is rosmarinic acid, an antioxidant and anti-inflammatory agent that crosses the blood-brain barrier more readily than most botanical compounds. Studies published in 2025 confirm significant correlations between regular rosmarinic acid consumption and reduced markers of cognitive inflammation. The quiet neurological process linked to memory decline. Steep 3 to 5 fresh leaves in hot water for 5 minutes. Drink in the evening, not as a sleep aid, as a neurological reset, as a daily signal to the nervous system that it is safe to rest. The ancient world used mint as a digestive and calming herb. Modern neuroscience is discovering they were more right than they knew. Plant 4 was so central to the Passover meal that it remains part of that ceremony to this day. And the reason it was chosen has nothing to do with flavor. God instructed the Israelites to eat the Passover lamb with bitter herbs, not as a punishment, not as an afterthought, as a biological preparation. Bitter herbs stimulate bile production. They prepare the digestive system for a rich, fatty meal. They activate the liver. They initiate the cascade of digestive enzymes that allow the body to absorb nutrients efficiently. The ancient world understood this not as chemistry, but as tradition. And tradition preserved what chemistry would only confirm 3,000 years later. Chicory is one of the primary candidates identified by biblical scholars as the bitter herb of Passover. It grows as aggressively as any weed, returning from its deep taproot year after year even if you cut it to the ground. It tolerates drought, poor soil, and neglect with equal indifference. Plant chicory seeds in autumn or early spring. They germinate readily, require no special soil preparation, and establish themselves permanently once rooted. The roots, when dried and ground, produce a caffeine-free coffee alternative that has been used medicinally for liver and digestive support for centuries. The prebiotic fiber in chicory root, inulin, feeds the beneficial bacteria in the gut microbiome. And in 2026, the gut microbiome is no longer considered merely a digestive organ. It is understood as a primary regulator of immune function, mood, and inflammation throughout the entire body. Plant 3 appears in one of the most dramatic harvests in the Old Testament, a story of abundance so overwhelming that the people had to be told to stop gathering. In Genesis 25, Esau came in from the field exhausted. He smelled a pot of lentil stew, and he traded his entire birthright for a bowl of it. This is not a story about foolishness. This is a story about a man who had been working in extreme physical conditions and whose body was depleted of exactly what lentils provide: protein, iron, folate, slow-release complex carbohydrates that sustain energy without spiking blood sugar. His body knew what it needed, he just didn't negotiate well. Lentils fix nitrogen in the soil as they grow, meaning they improve the ground for every crop planted after them. They germinate in cool weather and require almost no maintenance. Plant them 1 inch deep in early spring or autumn in any reasonable soil, water them in, and let them climb. For blood sugar management, which becomes an increasingly critical concern in the decade after 50, lentils have one of the lowest glycemic index ratings of any food. Okay, their fiber and protein combination slows glucose absorption in a way that metformin attempts to replicate pharmaceutically. A garden that grows lentils is a garden that feeds you protein without a butcher, that manages your blood sugar without a pharmacy, that improves its own soil while doing both. Jacob knew exactly what he was cooking. Plant 2 was among the foods that sustained King David's army in the wilderness. And the reason it was chosen above almost everything else tells you exactly what kind of plant it is. When David fled Jerusalem during Absalom's rebellion, his supporters brought him wheat and barley and beans and lentils. Not luxury provisions, survival provisions. Crops chosen because they were dense in nutrition, storable without refrigeration, and capable of sustaining a fighting force on the move. Across, broad beans, fava beans, are one of the most cold-hardy vegetables you can grow. They can be planted in autumn and will overwinter in the ground, surviving frost that destroys almost everything else, and producing a harvest in early spring before any other vegetable has even germinated. Plant seeds 2 inches deep and 6 inches apart in autumn. Do nothing. Come back in spring. The plants will be a foot tall and already flowering. The nutritional profile is exceptional for senior health. Broad beans are one of the few plant sources of L-dopa, the precursor to dopamine. As dopamine production naturally declines with age, affecting mood, motivation, and motor control, a regular dietary source of its precursor becomes genuinely significant. Not a cure, not a supplement, a food that your body has been processing for thousands of years. And now, we arrive at plant 1. I told you at the beginning you would look at your garden differently after this. This plant has been there all along. Most people walk past it every day. And every day they walk past a vegetable, a medicine, and a lesson in resilience. We remember the cucumbers of Egypt. Of all the foods the Israelites missed in the wilderness, the fish, the melons, the leeks, the onions, the garlic, they named cucumbers first. That sequencing is not accidental. In the ancient Near East, cucumbers were grown in enormous quantities because they were one of the fastest, most productive, most effortless crops a farmer could plant. The vines sprawled and multiplied. The fruits came quickly. The water content in a hot, dry climate made them a hydration source as much as a food source. Cucumbers are warm season growers that establish quickly and produce abundantly. Plant seeds after the last frost, 1 inch deep, 12 inches apart. Train the vines up a simple trellis to save space, and a cucumber plant climbing a 6-foot trellis produces the same yield as one sprawling across 10 square feet of ground. Water consistently during flowering and fruiting. Other than that, watch them go. The health case for cucumbers goes beyond hydration. Cucurbitaceans, the bitter compounds in cucumber skin, are now studied extensively for their ability to inhibit inflammatory pathways associated with certain cancers and metabolic disease. The silica content supports connective tissue formation, including the cartilage that cushions the joints most affected by age-related wear. Ian and the ancient Israelites in the scorching wilderness, they just knew that cucumbers made them feel better. Sometimes that is enough. 13 vegetables, thousands of years of cultivation, centuries of sustained communities, generations of people who ate well, stayed strong, and grew old with far fewer of the chronic conditions that define modern aging. None of these plants required a PhD in horticulture. None of them required expensive equipment or premium fertilizers. None of them demanded perfect soil, a large plot, or ideal weather. They required a seed, a patch of earth, or a pot, and the willingness to step back and let something ancient do what it has always done. The pharmaceutical industry spends billions every year developing synthetic versions of compounds these plants produce for free. Quercetin from onions, allicin from garlic, linalool from coriander, L-dopa from broad beans, omega-3s from purslane and flax. Your garden or your balcony or your windowsill can grow every single one of them. Which one will you start with? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video gave you something, a new plant to try, a perspective you hadn't considered, a reason to look at your outdoor space differently, share it with someone who grows their own food or someone who is thinking about starting. This knowledge was never supposed to be rare. It is only rare because nobody is talking about it loudly enough. We are talking about it here. Next week, 15 biblical herbs that ancient physicians use as medicine. 3 of them are almost certainly already growing in your yard right now, being pulled out as weeds. Subscribe so you do not miss it. I will see you there.